Welcome to the Salmon Archive.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Salmon Archives. Today is the second podcast in a series of podcasts that the staff of the Salmon will be doing on Saturdays. Today, we decided to talk about the pandemic, and we're going to transition into some other topics involving it. But the first question I have for the kids here in this podcast is, what are some things you miss the most since this pandemic has happened? For me, I think just that occasional burger in a restaurant with my family. I really miss going out and having that meal like once a week or so where I'm at a restaurant and enjoy, some of the favorite food that I have in a social setting. What are some things that young people miss as a result of having to social distance and sort of avoid crowds and all those things? Who's going to go first and talk about the things you miss?
So I can go first, but some of the things that I miss are being able to not have to think about oh wait, I have to get my mask before I go out. It's almost because then you also get transition to the thing of oh wait, I usually have to get my mask. Another thing that I miss is you used to be able to go over and hang out with your friends, but now you have to think, okay, who of my friends and their family could could get it a lot easier. So we have to think about that and everything. Because I have one friend whose family is really susceptible to it, and so I can't really see her, which makes we do Google Meets occasionally, but I really you miss seeing your friends and everything.
Bella's right. There are a lot of intricacies to being safe during the pandemic. We can't just jump in the car, right? We have to think about our mask. We have to think about where we're headed, and we have to be extra cautious when we go and see people and who we see. So that's certainly something I would agree with. Who wants to chime in with what she or he misses with the pandemic? In addition to what Bella said. Izzy?
I really do miss not having to wear a mask everywhere I go. My parents aren't very strict about it. They're not you have to wear it as soon as you go outside. It's more of if I'm around people or I'm going in stores. But I do miss seeing my friends besides over FaceTime and everything, because it's not the same as just if you're playing an online game with them. And as everything sort of settled down, I was allowed to hang out with some of my friends, but we couldn't hang out for that long. And if we were going anywhere, we had to wear a mask, and we could barely hear each other. We're screaming at each other basically.
It does change the interaction. There are people in my family I still haven't seen in months because they're susceptible to getting this. And my exposure is increased because I'm around a lot of people at work. Even though I love being around all of you, I do worry about that. Who else has some information about things they miss, the normalcy of not having the pandemic? What else do you miss as young people?
I miss school lunches being normal because it used to be one of my favorite times of the day, and now I hate lunch because every day I'm just sitting all alone and I can't talk to people through my barrier thingy, and it's you have to scream or you have to stand up to be able to hear people.
Yeah, good points, Emma. If you were to look into the Sam's cafeteria, it looks like a dystopian novel, right? You have kids behind screens, kids eating by themselves. It is far different than what a traditional lunchroom would look like. There are some positives, however, a silver lining that came from this terrible time. I know it sounds weird to say positives, but I know I've rediscovered some things that I really enjoy. For example, I'm playing a lot of guitar, and I think that's been good for my mental health, and it's been good for my abilities. What are some things that you've found that have helped you cope with the terribleness of COVID-19? What have you done to spend your time positively? I think of this.
I think music plays a big role with it. Usually I like to listen to different genres of music, try to test them out, seek my interests, and it really helps whenever trying to buy time or trying to focus on something a bit more.
Yeah, I agree, Christian. Music's such a big part of my life. It's so rare that I'm not listening to it. Sometimes it drives my wife crazy because I always have music playing, whether I'm playing it on my guitar or listening to music, and there's no boundary to my musical interest. I can listen to, music from our grandparents' generation, or I can listen to modern music, although I do think modern music isn't quite as good. Who else has something that they've found that works for them, that helps with dealing with this crazy time?
I have discovered podcasts. I really didn't know that they existed before this.
Yeah, some of those podcasts can be quite cool. I've taken some walks and listened to some of like the crime podcasts that I found to be really interesting, mainly like mysteries that haven't been solved. They can easily, take up an hour of your time. Katie, how about you? What are some things you've sort of found that you enjoy that you didn't know you enjoyed as much prior to this?
This might be a little bit of a silly answer, but okay, I've always liked frogs, but I've gotten bored and I've started doing like copious amounts of research on them, and it's really comforting. And I guess I think of it as a coping mechanism, just reading all on and on and on and on about these frogs. So I guess that's what I've been doing.
I think that's pretty cool. It's science, it's knowledge. I think it's important to be curious, especially as a young person. When you find something that interests you, there's no harm in learning a great deal about it. That knowledge bank will serve you well in other areas of life. Has anyone else dug in deeply to a new topic? Christian had mentioned music. Grace was talking about podcasts. Katie, she's learning about frogs. Is there anybody else who's learned something new that they weren't doing previously? Izzy, what have you done since the pandemic hit?
I've learned to knit and well, I know how to knit already, but my mom taught me how to crochet. And I'm currently working on a sweater. And since I have so much time to do everything, I've just been doing that a lot. And I've started playing my guitar.
Cool.
But yeah.
It sounds like you found some healthy outlets. One of the healthy outlets I found can also be unhealthy, and I blame my wife because she's a wonderful cook and a wonderful baker. She's been baking nonstop. Is there anyone here who has fallen in love with baking or made baked goods or food or cake? And what have you made? Because I can't stop eating what she's making. It's good for my soul, but bad for my ability to be thin. Who here is baking and what have you made? Because I think a lot of people have cooked a great deal during the pandemic. Emma, how about you?
I learned how to make soft pretzel bites along with a bunch of other desserts, and I really like baking and just eating what I made.
Yeah, I think people for a long time have eaten their feelings, but with the pandemic, there's not a lot to do inside, especially when it's cold. So baking's a great way to overcome some stress. Katie, have you done any baking?
I haven't been doing a crazy amount of baking. I've been baking more than normal, but nothing crazy. But my dad, at his work, they do things. It's maybe kind of weekly, maybe less than that. But they just get together on a meet and they bake as a way of bonding. So they work together better and work. And so he's been making all these pastries and all this food. He's been baking a lot.
It sounds good. It's hard to say no to freshly baked goods, right? Especially if it's dessert. It's I would call that comfort food. Anybody else here who has discovered new foods? Maybe you didn't bake it, but you're trying new things. How about takeout food? Because one of the things I think, I mentioned that I really miss is going to a restaurant and having a burger. I have enjoyed some takeout. I've tried to support some restaurants, especially in our local communities. Have you done any takeout foods that you normally wouldn't do, or is that not something that your families are doing? Are you baking most of your meals and cooking most of your meals at home?
My family, we've been getting takeout a little bit more than normal.
Yeah.
But we've been getting a lot of Mediterranean food, so I tried that and that was really good.
Grace, tell me a little bit more about it. Or where are you getting Mediterranean food? Are you going to Aladdin's or are you going somewhere else?
We're going to Aladdin's, but we can't really do that right now because I think they're like remodeling the whole I the I don't know what it's called, but like where the store is, they're remodeling like all of the stores to
Yeah.
it.
Cool. Yeah, we love Aladdin's. If you haven't had the Aladdin's hummus, I hope Grace can vouch for me on this. If you've ever had hummus, the best hummus I've ever had is the fresh hummus from Aladdin's. Delicious Mediterranean food. Emma, you have another topic that you said you've discovered. Why don't you talk about that for a second?
I really just like doing research on cool places in the world, and I like thinking about going there because my friend and I decided that whenever we're like out of college or whatever, we're gonna go travel a lot and take a bunch of pictures together because I like taking pictures and she likes modeling for pictures.
Cool. That opens a door for Kiara to talk because she's taken some pictures for a story for us about Millvale and some really cool things about Millvale. There's a lot of really interesting things near our community. Kiara, do you want to talk for a minute about that? Have you gone out and about and seen anything interesting in our community?
I took a couple pictures around, yeah.
And what was the coolest thing you saw as far as Millvale goes?
I'm not really sure.
That mosaic we talked about is quite cool that I know Izzy participated with. Did you see that when you went for your walk, or are you still making your way there?
I seen that, yeah.
What did you think of it?
It was cool.
Yeah, I think that art has been like another way to spend some time. I know all of you are like pretty good at art. You draw, you paint, you do some really cool things. Hey, one thing that this has done for me is it's allowed me to change my style a little bit in class. I'm not firing on all cylinders yet, but we're doing some cool things. Like we just had a little contest in my classes, and actually Katie won from the third block, which was really cool for a drawing she did. And I think that, the fact we're doing this right now, we didn't meet like this in the past when we had newspaper club. Christian will attest to that. We didn't have these like virtual meetings, which I think are really quite cool where we can talk. Are there any other parts of that topic that somebody wants to address? New things you've found, silver lining in this bad time?
So the thing with like kind of like with the pandemic, it like since it like gives much time to yourself, almost like your brain just like my brain's just like been thinking and thinking a lot, and it gives me a lot of creative ideas to write books and everything. And so like I have like 4 ideas for a book, but like for like 4 different books, and I haven't really gone to writing them yet, but I'm going to.
That's cool.
Like I feel like it like allows your mind to like see the world on like a new perspective and like and everything like that.
Yeah, I read this really cool article last year called Let Children Be Bored Again. And by bored, it meant if you're bored, your mind will find something to do. And it's, we live in a world now where everything is instant and everything is right away, and we have to feel satisfied immediately. But when you're bored, you find things to fill or cure your boredom. Nick M., if you can hear me, I believe you're listening in on this. You've done some writing and you've sent me a book. Will you talk a little bit about your motivation? Have you done any writing during the pandemic, Nick?
I actually wrote that like up back in March. And I just really my motivation is just it's fun to do. So when nobody's asking me to do something, I do it.
Yeah, cool. I mean, when you write a story, you create something, right? It's something that you've built and it's permanent. And that's one reason why I love Newspaper Club. When you pull off a cool interview or a cool story, it's forever. Sometimes I reference the stories that I wrote when I was in high school and college, and I use that information to advise all of you. So I think that writing is a great way to satisfy some of the boredom or pass some of the time. And it only makes you better to do those things. Okay, let's shift gears a little bit because I know the pandemic is one of our topics here today. What do you think is going to happen with school? As school goes further and the flu season gets worse and it gets colder outside and people can't be outdoors, do you think we're going to stay in school, or do you think we're going to end up being virtual again? Izzy, do you have some thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think we're going to end up back online probably like end of November, possibly early December.
And
Just
if that happened, would you be devastated, Izzy? Would that be really something that would be hard for you?
Well, I wouldn't say like hard, but I'd just be really sad and like disappointed because it's good to be out of the house for a long period of time, and seeing like other people.
Yeah.
Which, you know, is not like on a computer. And I tend to like have to go like do my work outside or something because I'll just get so distracted at my house because like all my pets are here, all the like things I like to do is at my house, and I don't end up paying attention. And while I'm at school, I can actually learn what or understand what I'm doing.
Yeah, and you know, Izzy, I think seeing people face to face really makes a big difference. We've talked about mental health. It's really helped me to like see all of you in person and get to know you past the computer screen.
Yeah.
Anybody else have some thoughts on that? Is there anyone else who thinks we might end up being virtual?
So I don't think we're going to be virtual, only because we're talking about Shaler itself. So Shaler doesn't really have like a very high people getting COVID. Like people aren't getting COVID. Like say like if it's like that's one of the more major cities, and we're like more controlled. And since we're like all like in the same like community, it's a lot easier to control the virus, I feel. So like I feel like that way we would and I mean the teachers and the principals and everyone and like the administrations, I feel like they don't want to go back into like virtual, only because it would be like so hard to like go back and forth. I feel like just staying like hybrid as much as possible would be like really, really beneficial to getting kids' grades back up and being more like active and like active in like the school environment.
Yeah, I agree with what you said, Bella. I think that I think Shaler's done better than a lot of communities. I mean, if you look at our schools, right? We've had a few cases, but it's been somewhat minor as far as the schools go. So I'm optimistic that we can stick this out and do it the way that we've been doing it. I do think moving to 5-day of full instruction would be a little bit too dangerous, but I'm happy to see all of you come into my classroom twice a week, and we still get that one day, you know, that virtual Wednesday. How do you feel about virtual Wednesdays? Do you like or dislike virtual Wednesdays?
Oh, I like it a lot.
Tell me why you like it, Christian.
It kind of feels like a free day, to be honest. You don't have that many homework to do, and there's not many live meetings. So that means you can get your work done a lot quicker and a lot earlier. So it really brings a lot more freedom to the day.
And a good student like you is going to complete all of that work. The only problem with the virtual Wednesdays from a teacher's point of view is some of the kids aren't doing the work when they have that time. But I like them as well. Emma wrote that I think they don't want to deal with angry parents. I listened to some of the calls before the school board meeting. It was Emma, you're right. And you know what? I feel bad for parents because parents, they want to work, right? They want to be able to work. And it's really hard to like find childcare when you have to work. So I think going virtual is a tremendous hardship for a lot of people. I think at the same time, if it's too dangerous to be in school, safety needs to be the first priority. But like Bella said, Shaler's done pretty well. And maybe it's because none of us have really like left the community. Christian, why don't you talk about your opinion on the school regulations for COVID?
I don't think they're employing it enough, even though it seems like it. I think some teachers aren't even wearing the masks right. Like some of them are putting their masks under their noses, so that just defeats the purpose entirely. And the hallways, they can get little bit crowded, and it gets a bit messy at sometimes.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think that we need to be as safe and vigilant as possible so we don't have that mistake and end up back in virtual. You know, we have to sort of like all work together and wear the masks right and support one another rather than, hey, it's human nature to like let things slide or slip. Think back to the first days of the pandemic. How many of you had parents who were wiping down packages? And are they still doing that? Because I'm not wiping down packages like I was the first few weeks. I've definitely eased up a little bit. Kiara says that everyone on the bus takes them off. Is that something that you've all experienced? Are kids taking off masks on buses? Or are you kids picked up by your parents? I guess it depends on the bus, right? I know that my bus when I was in school was notoriously bad. There were kids thrown off of it all the time. Bella wrote, I feel like it kind of comes back to accountability for the teachers and other people who are not following regulations. I know, Bella, it's so hard to tell somebody when he or she's not wearing the mask correctly. And sometimes I don't think it's intentional. I just think people, they just sort of let it slip and slide and they don't really say anything. Teachers should set the precedent, though. I agree, and I hope that they do. Because I certainly try to set a good example for all of you. But there are times when I'm reading to the class. You kids probably have seen this if you're in my class. There are times I pull the mask up so you can hear my words, right? Izzy says so many teachers not wearing masks correctly. We are tiptoeing a fine line because our responsibility is to educate you. And balancing that with the mask, I think, is a little tricky at times. But I do think that most of us will get better as we go, for sure. So is there anybody here who would be excited if we went back to virtual? Was there anybody at all? We have 8 students in this podcast today. Emma says no. She's a hard no. Christian?
I think I'm not excited for it, but it's something I expect to happen because as we're venturing towards the colder days, I think we're going to have to do it, at least for the sake of safety for everyone else. But it's something I'm not looking forward to, but it's something that I expect.
And I have to tell you, kids, there is life at the end of the tunnel. Okay, there is going to be a time when there's a vaccine and we can move forward as a society. We are not that far off. Emma says, I can't stand virtual learning. It is the worst. And she did it with some capital letters and some lowercase letters. I have mixed feelings on it, Em, because virtual learning allows me to present my lesson clearer. But at the same time, I like seeing all of you. I get excited when I see my students in my class. And maybe that's because I like all of my students this year, even the ones that are maybe not the easiest to teach. I like every single one of the kids. So Grace says some teachers don't pay attention to virtual students sometimes. Do you think that they leave it asynchronous a little bit too much, Grace, where kids have to do their own thing?
Well, in algebra, it's that's one of the main classes where it's happening because I will have a bunch of questions when I'm online, but our teacher will either be she won't be looking at the chat thingy, or she won't be looking at the computer screen to see us raising our hands. So the only questions that really would be answered would be those people in school.
Well, let me say this, Grace. I want to give your teacher the benefit of the doubt because it's never been harder to be me. And it's not about me, and I don't want you to feel bad about teachers because we're doing the job we signed up for. But at the same time, it's what a balancing act. Bella, of course, go ahead. Take over.
Oh, no, I was saying to what Grace was saying about the algebra, the teachers, because whenever my teachers in the classroom, if you have questions and we're away from the screen, just turn on your mic and say, because we're not going to see it on the screen either way. And so that's does your teacher do that? Just unmute and ask a question, or just you have to put it in the chat?
Some of my teachers are that way, and then others, they have been you have to raise your hand in class, or you have to put it in the chat box. So it's very weird.
That stinks, because it's ever changing.
Yeah, and each, I think it's one of the problems is each teacher has different expectations and different methods, and we're streamlining some of them, but I know that it's a work in progress. I'll be willing to admit that. How many times for the kids in my class have I started teaching and not presented what I thought you could see? I think I do that all of the time.
Yeah, it's pretty often that it happens. And the one day, it was about 10, 15 minutes into class, and you had just realized because we typed it in chat.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know what drives me crazy, Nick, is kids could like stop me. I want them to like yell, Mr. D, you're not presenting, but no one says a word. And I'm 15 minutes later, I finally realized that I wasn't showing you what I needed you to see.
Yeah. But like, on the contrary, a lot of like you even and all of the rest of my teachers tend to say things that like they want us to when we're virtual to ask questions. They'll even sometimes direct questions at us specifically.
Is that a good or a bad thing, Nick?
Both.
Okay. What makes it a bad thing?
Just because like sometimes you're like in the meet and you like maybe you're on like a Jamboard or something. Like, because when I'm on something that's not the meet, my phone or iPad and whatever I'm on gets like really glitchy and like the screen will turn black off and on a bunch.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to get back to that and then to unmute and then the screen's going all glitchy and then once it's over I have to remute and go back to the thing and figure out how to write down what everything she just said.
So the best case scenario, Nick, would be we keep doing what we're doing. And Bella said that's what she hopes happens. We have some hybrid. Shaler stays low on the cases. The worst case scenario, we end up virtual. I want to say this about virtual. If it happens, and it's this winter, we're virtual, I hope we get blizzard after blizzard of snowstorms. What do you all think of that? Are you excited about the fact that it's actually going to snow a little bit, I think, on Monday morning? If we're stuck at home, bring on the snow, baby. I can't wait for it. What are you thinking about that?
I mean, couldn't blizzards like result in internet issues? Like people would lose internet and then meets would glitch?
I guess that's the case. I'm hopeful that our internet's better than the snow. Maybe it's not. The reason I say that is if we don't have to go anywhere, right? If you don't have to drive anywhere, like get on a bus or drive into school and teach, I don't mind there being snow outside. I actually think it's quite cozy when there's going to be several inches of snow and you're home safe. And I love looking out the window and watching it snow when it's sort of, it's glistening and the holidays are coming and all that stuff. What do you all think? Do you have a comforting feeling like I do when snow arrives?
I love the feeling. It's very satisfying, and it gets even better whenever it's like snowing and you're looking at a big window with it and you're just listening to jazz or Christmas music.
Yeah, you are on point, Christian. That's exactly what I'm talking about. But I'll tell you what, when it's coming and I know I have to drive to school, it's a completely different feeling, right? Because in Reserve Township where I live, there's a lot of hills. How about all of you? Like, do you get that excitement that builds with like, a winter storm warning? Does that happen to you like it does to Christian and me? It's exciting. I still think like a little kid thinks when I know snow's coming.
Not so much for me, partly because I'm in Millville and we don't have that much of a backyard. And like they salt the sidewalks and the streets, so we don't really get to see snow.
Oh, yeah. And you know what, Grace? The snow that does fall in Millville gets kind of gross, right? It's like it gets like brown and dirty and it's plowed on the sides.
Yeah, and people's dogs like to do their business in it. And
Yeah, that's terrible. I love dogs, but that's terrible for sure. How about you, Izzy? Do you go out into the community when it snows? Do you walk through Millville?
No, not really, because I like the cold, but I also don't at the same time.
Okay.
And like Grace said, it's really hard in Millville because we don't really have backyards.
Yeah.
They're very tiny. And with what woods we have, the older teenagers in Millville just completely trash it. So you can't even do anything fun with the snow or anything. Yeah.
Well, this is one of my best feelings, okay? One of my best feelings is leaving school on a Friday, knowing that there's going to be a big snowstorm and knowing that it's coming that night and I'm coming home and I have all the food I need and I have everything I need at home and I'm going to be safe and sound and warm and I'm going to not have to worry about leaving. That's just like a really cool feeling to me. Do you have any other examples where like you get these cool feelings that you get excited about or it's special? Christian, I think, hit the nail on the head when he talked about it. Katie, do you have one?
This is kind of just about snow again, but I think the reason why snow is so nice, because snow, it can be dangerous because it's so cold outside. If you're out there for too long without protection, you could get very sick. But I feel like just knowing you're inside and you're safe and you have food and it's warm, I feel like that's why snow is so nice.
Yeah.
Maybe it's different for other people, but that's why it's so nice for me.
You see it the same way, Katie. It's like this this comfort, right? This security feeling that I love. Speaking of moments or feelings that I love, if we do go virtual, I hope it happens after the holiday break, because one of the coolest feelings for a teacher, I think, in any school year is the day before holiday break. All right. I just think like the way the building feels, there's an energy there. And kids are like swapping presents and teachers are in good moods and you're doing like little activities. I think that's so cool. That's one of my favorite school days of the year every year. How about all of you? Do you love that feeling? Like that you have 11 or 12 days off and you're leaving and it's just like so exciting. I'd go as far as saying that's a better feeling than the last day of school. Agree or disagree on that?
I agree completely.
Do you really, Christian? Tell me why you agree with that, because I think a lot of kids would probably say the last day of school is more exciting.
Honestly, like it kind of feels like at the day before winter break, yeah, like you have that sort of excitement that of like having that break, but then you know that you're gonna come back like sooner or later. So like after winter break, you get to come back after New Year's and you get to like talk to your friends about what you did or yeah, stuff like that. Otherwise, like after summer break, it's a long break. You can't really connect with your friends as much as you have. It feels more like an end rather than to like more of an excitement because you're gonna disconnect with a lot.
Well said. Anybody else?
So I wanted to say this. Like I was thinking, that the one thing, especially with things this year, I feel like break's gonna feel different this year because of just being cooped up with your family or whoever you live with. It's not gonna really feel like a break. It's just gonna feel like how everything is right now.
It's gonna be hard, right? If we're not able to have like parties like we normally do, because in my family, I have so many cousins, I can't even name them all. And a lot of them come to my parents' house. And I'm not sure, like everything's up in the air right now. Like, are we gonna be able to do those things? I'm not sure we're gonna be able to. But at the same time, I think that we'll find ways to make it special. I think that sometimes a situation being special is what you put into it. Like I already know my wife and I, we're gonna decorate much earlier this year. We're gonna have our trees up and our lights on, and pretty much like next week maybe even start getting ready for the holidays, because I don't want to like rush Christmas and forget about Thanksgiving, but at the same time, I just feel warm. I feel excited when like the tree's up. It makes everything feel better. Anybody else on that? Is there any other layer to this podcast that we haven't covered before we shut it down today? I thought it was pretty good. And I think for our next one, we're going to talk about books and movies and some of the really cool franchises that we enjoy. That seems to be the consensus here.
I wanted to add on what Christian was saying earlier about winter and summer break. I think that the 6th grade winter party last year was probably my favorite year before Christmas, like in school, because we went on the field trip and then we had the big party, and it was just really fun because you got to just like hang out and run around and just like do fun stuff. And I wish that we could do that every year.
Emma, you brought up a point that we didn't make. One of the casualties to COVID is there's no more field trips. right? There's no more parties at school. And I feel bad about that because we've done some really cool things. You know, yesterday I talked about when the newspaper club went to the haunted fire hall. But we've had kids in Washington, D.C. We've gone to a really cool art museum in Cleveland, Ohio. We have done like Olympics at the school. We've had the Outsiders Day at the school. And I think like some of those things are lost. That's one of the things I wish we could get back, because I think the social aspects of school are really important for sure. What are some things you did, Emma, for that party last year? What made that so fun?
Well, first of all, we got free food.
Okay, that's a good start.
And there was loud music, which I like, and there was a photo booth, which I like because you got to go take free photos with your friends, and like you could be silly. I still have some of me and Izzy. I put them in my desk shield, and we're just very weird whenever it comes to those things. So it always makes me laugh.
Yeah.
And,
weird would be fine. Weird is good. Show me those pictures in the desk shield next time we're in class together.
Okay.
Okay, hey, anybody else? I thought that was a really smooth performance today. Great job on the podcast. Does anybody want to put finishing touches on this?
I have one more thing to say.
Go ahead.
Going back on the topic of the snow, one of the reasons that I think it's the like most amazing feeling ever is because not only like you're home and you don't have to like, it feels like you don't have any responsibility for that time. It's also like you can just like curl up in front of a fire with like a book and a cup of tea and just read, and then when you're done you just can go to sleep, and it just feels like there's no worries in the world.
I can't agree more. I love that feeling of not having to do anything. And sometimes it results in reading, sometimes it results in eating, sometimes it results in just watching a movie you weren't expecting to watch. You know, when you don't have to like rush with the pace of the world, it's really a nice and comforting feeling, especially if you have good food and you're home with your loved ones. I think that's so cool. Awesome. Okay, I'm going to end the video. This is going to be posted to the website. We have our second podcast done. Great job.